Hi everybody, my name is Sam DeCity. I want to provide today's content of looking back into 2025, the good things that happened, the things that we are still watching, and what we're looking forward to in 2026. Quick note on the changes that are coming in 2026. The salary deferral limit is going to be $24,500. If you are age 50 and older, you can do the $8,000 catch-up contribution. New in 2026, there is going to be the additional super catch-up for people who are age 60 to 63 by the end of the calendar year. You can do an additional $3,250 on top of that. So a total of $11,250 as a total catch-up if you fall between ages 60 and 63. Now I will note, back to that standard catch-up contribution, that $8,000, in 2025, if you were an employee who made that catch-up contribution and you made more than $150,000 in wages, you must make that catch-up contribution Roth. Okay, so if you're age 50 and older, you made more than $150,000 in 2025, you have to make that catch-up Roth in 2026. So pre-tax catch-ups aren't going to be allowed for this group. And if there's any questions or you want to use us as a resource to make sure you're planning the right way, we'd be happy to discuss this further. You know, there's been a lot of really great things that happened in 2025, but there's a lot of tipping points throughout the year that cause some fear and uncertainty. But to note, now that we've gotten through that year, 2025 was not abnormal. You can see here the volatility in stocks historically, the gray dots at the bottom of each line. There was a period every single year where we've seen volatility or an inter-year drawdown. So the gray dots are the largest inter-year drawdowns. On average, over the last 50 years, the average drawdown has been 14.5%. At some point, on average, the market has been down 14.5%, which is an interesting statistic. But knowingly so, we can understand that looking at the chart as an annualized return standpoint in blue, there's only about 8 or 9 years since 1990 that we actually have finished the year down. And we can remember some of those days, like 2008, 2022 after COVID. There are years that finish down, but 76% of the time, the market is finishing up when we do see some intra-year declines like we did last year. Even during those declines, staying the course worked really well in 2025. We saw some returns across major equity categories here: emerging markets, developing markets, U.S. large cap, mid cap, small cap. At April, when we felt that intra-year downturn, here are the statistics of where we're at. Emerging markets down 7.9%. Small caps, on the other hand, down a negative 21.3%. We felt that during that time period. But looking at where these sectors finished, emerging markets up 30.8%. That was the best sector in the market last year. Small caps finishing up 4.3. So even though we saw some drawdowns during the period, the great thing about your 401k or where you're saving in your investments, if you're making those contributions on a regular basis, we're using what's called dollar cost averaging. Like going to the store and things are on sale. We're going to feel that rebound like we saw by the end of the year in these like categories that felt a downturn but finished the year very well. Now, one thing that we are still watching and was a story as of late in 2025 and before is the weight of the Mag 7. And if you don't remember what the Mag 7 is, that is the largest 7 stocks in the S&P 500. Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, Tesla, Amazon, Nvidia. Those 7 stocks have truly controlled the S&P 500. So we want to be cognizant and aware of how much of those 7 stocks control the S&P 500. So something to continue to watch. We want to make sure that the 493 other stocks play their role as well, like they did towards the end of 2025 especially. But as of the beginning of 2026, they're sitting at about 35.7% of that total market weight in the S&P 500. So something to be aware of for diversification and concentration risk to look into for 2026 and beyond. Now, if we look at the actual trends of the earnings of these companies, in blue, the large cap or S&P 500, the trend the last few years has been extremely positive, which is why we see some of that higher weight towards those Mag 7 stocks. But as well, as we look beyond into the years, we see mid caps and small caps poised for better earnings as interest rates started to come down in 2025. So that's a very great spot that we see moving forward, is the mid caps and small caps starting to pick up their pace and get in line with the earnings trends that the larger S&P 500 companies are seeing as well. I hope you guys found that informative. If there is any questions as to some of the trends, some of the topics that we're seeing in 2025, please use these 2 links to reach out to one of our advisors to speak with you. But hope you guys have a wonderful 2026 and excited for what's ahead.